It's 7 o'clock and everybody's here, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so let me welcome everyone to the January meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. It's the first meeting of 2025. It's the first meeting of the second quarter of the 21st century, however you want to look at it. And we've had the Pledge of Allegiance, and so we'll have roll call, please.
Squadrito,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Gross,
Here.
Hayes,
Here.
Lapp is here, McDonald,
Here.
Ulver,
Here.
Shingles,
Here.
Thering,
Here.
everyone is here.
Okay, we have perfect attendance. Good to see everybody. Next item is approval of tonight's agenda. It's a relatively short agenda, but we do have one new business item. Anything else that anyone is aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda? Any changes or concerns with the agenda?
We got a second agenda. Did something change?
I don't know.
It had the wrong date on it, I believe.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Wait, no, it didn't.
Yeah, well, it's got today's date.
Actually, I think the reason you did, I handed out the corrected minutes, which had the wrong date.
Oh, okay.
And in doing that, I also handed out copies of the agenda that should have gone in the door over here.
Okay.
So I apologize for just that.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve. Support.
Okay, so there's a motion by Olver with second by Gross to approve tonight's agenda as it was prepared. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so agenda's approved, so we'll proceed. Next item is approval of the minutes. We met on December 17th. That was the last meeting of last year. And as was just mentioned, you have a revised version of the minutes on your tables. The one thing that was mentioned to me in the email was that Commissioner McDonald was inadvertently listed twice under roll call in two different places, so that was corrected. I'm not sure if there was an issue with the date or not. But so we'll look at the one that's on your desk here as the one we'll consider. So any other corrections or additions or concerns with the minutes?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, so it's a motion by Olver, second by Hayes to approve the December 17th minutes as they were corrected by Tara Green. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Minutes are approved. Next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. And first item is, as always, is Commissioner Thering, updates from Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On our December highlights, on our December 18th of 24 meeting, the Board of Trustees had their second reading of the Township initiated rezone of a lot at 943 South Isabella Road from light industrial to rural residential, and that did pass. The Board of Trustees also approved of a letter to be drafted by the township manager / staff expressing our concern over legislation that takes away local control of sand, gravel mining projects. And I haven't heard anything on that lately. To send out to our local representatives. On the January 8th meeting, the Board of Trustees approved 2 parcels of vacant ag land into the state PA 116 farmland preservation program. It's something that what I take away from it is, in a nutshell, it gives them certain tax benefits along with preserving our agricultural land for a extended period of time.
Where are they located?
It is over by the expressway on the south end, but on the east side.
Hmm.
Yes.
Any questions from commissioners for Commissioner Thering on Board of Trustees matters? Okay, if not, thank you. We're ready to move on. Next item is Commissioner McDonald, updates from ZBA. I don't know if they've met or not, but,
No meeting, no updates.
okay. They meet as needed, and so them not having to meet is actually a good thing, so. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on. Next item is the Community and Economic Development Monthly Report, which is always in your packet. And we always pause and give commissioners an opportunity to ask questions on anything they might have seen in the report. So this is now on the floor, so if there's any commissioners who have questions for Rodney and or Peter, you're welcome to ask them at this time.
Were those in at 975 South Isabella, that other parcel, were those animals removed? Could you
Yeah,
say-
so in the parcel that remains zone industrial, all animals have been removed.
That's what it appeared. The chicken thing's not gonna go away.
They updated it now, I think, for allowance for all the people that had their chickens in the area, right? I think it wasn't zoning change, they just accepted it because it was R1 that they could keep them.
So the zoning change that was made by the board only affected the property 943. And
Okay.
yes, that was rezoned R1, and so that's why that one's noted as the enforcement action ending. Certainly, any broader action would require a process through the Plan Commission to amend the zoning ordinance, to add any other elements for allowances for chickens.
Like Isabella's looking at it right now. You know, they're currently looking right now to expand some of their backyard poultry.
Other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we'll move on. You can always, if you do have questions that come up, you can always direct them to Rodney at any time. Last item in this section is other reports. Is there anything anyone else, any other commissioners have that needs to be reported or presented at this time? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on. So before we get to our new business item, we always have a public comment towards the front end of our meeting, which is on items that are not on the agenda for tonight. So if there's any member of the public who wishes to address the commission on any item that is not on our tonight's agenda, they're invited to do so at this time. If you're in the room, we ask you to come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you are online, make your presence known, and we will make it possible for you to speak.
No one's online.
Okay, so we don't have anyone online, and I'm not seeing anyone coming to the podium. Oh, you gotta open it. So, public comments open at 7:09. And seeing no one coming to the podium, we'll assume that audience members are here for other items. Going once, twice. Okay, so public comment is closed. We'll go ahead and we'll have an extended public comment towards the end of the meeting that's unrestricted. So we're ready to move on to our new business. We have one new business item. It is a preliminary site plan application number 24-03. It's for a new 28,300 square foot facility for Thrive Community Church on the northeast corner of South Isabella and Bud Street. So we'll start with introduction by Township staff, then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll move to our deliberations.
Thank you. Everybody should have a copy of our report dated January 15th. You also have at the table tonight a letter we received just today from Lisa Campbell, who owns the property directly to the north of the Thrive Community Church parcel. And she offered some written comments that was left beside on your table when you came in. We are reviewing tonight is a preliminary site plan. As you're aware, in terms of the site plan process, for our purposes, our ordinance divides it into two parts. The preliminary site plan is more conceptual. There's some sort of preliminary engineering done, make sure they can actually put what they'd like to do on the site, surveying and that sort of thing. But the site is not fully engineered. There are a number of details that would come to follow on the final site plan. Things like stormwater management, utilities, greater detail in a number of elements. Because essentially, the preliminary site plan is more conceptual. The final site plan is intended to be the construction plan. Once a final site plan is approved, building permit can be issued, and the project can get underway. So what you're seeing right now is a preliminary plan. So that, some may notice that there are a number of details that aren't there. We've noted some in our report, and made some comments on these elements here. I'll just hit a few of the highlights. As I said, we did note that there were a few items of required information as part of a preliminary site plan normally that were not included. One of them is what the ordinance refers to as a detailed use statement. This is I'm on page 28 of the packet for this. This is essentially the applicant explaining what this property will be used for. We've actually seen a similar statement from Thrive Community Church 2022. They went through a process with the Zoning Board of Appeals because at that time they had a concern about the allowable uses in the B7 district. So there was a request for an interpretation of the ordinance to address that. The Board of Appeals did interpret the ordinance. We actually subsequently amended the ordinance to coordinate with that. So it's actually now part of the ordinance. But nonetheless, as part of that, they provided a detailed use statement. Our suggestion to the applicant has simply been to put that on the site plan. So it's a detail normally on this available to us at this stage. But we have no concerns about what is proposed for the site based on what they have shared before. It meets the ordinance in terms of land use, and so we simply ask it to be on the final site plan. They do have some comments on the use-related comments on the site plan, but it's not a full list. There's some comments related to loading area. There are loading areas proposed in the front. Typically, loading areas are not in the front yard. There's some ordinance provisions related to loading areas that just simply need to be met. We noted them in our report. We believe they can be met, even if the loading areas in the front yard. This loading area will double as a bus drop-off and car drop-off. It's sort of serving multiple functions. But the details just need to be addressed on the final site plan. I think probably the biggest item that we noted was related to sidewalks. They are proposing a sidewalk along Bud Street, as well as a connection into the building, and of course sidewalks across the front of the building. They proposed a sidewalk along part of the Isabella Road frontage, but stopped it. The site has some wetlands. On the plan you see, it's labeled as natural area to remain. As staff understands, these are regulated wetlands regulated by the state of Michigan. They've proposed them to not be impacted. In order to put a sidewalk in that space along that part of the Isabella Road frontage, they would either have to elevate the sidewalk, the boardwalk, or they would have to fill into that regulated wetland. That has an impact. Whenever you're filling into a regulated wetland, typically the state requires that you had to create new wetlands somewhere else, and it's not a one-to-one exchange usually. Usually it's a higher ratio than that, creating new wetland. So they have proposed not to extend the sidewalk into that natural area to remain. the key item for us is that they have not asked for relief from construction. And so you'll see most of our comments on that are directed at that issue. The question of whether to grant relief, of course, belongs to the Planning Commission, but at this point they have not asked for relief, so they're required to put that sidewalk on the plan. In this case, we're asking that be on the final site plan, and that if they would like to ask for relief, they will need to also put that request on the final site plan. The issue of wetlands and mitigation, I think all that is best addressed by the engineer when they do come back to you, if they make a request, that they come back to you and provide some detail on that. We can provide some notes as to what kinds of detail we'd like to see. We did make some comments on some of the final site plan items, such as landscaping. But as I said, these are all final site plan details. These are all items that we believe there's sufficient area on the site, and site plan as designed to satisfy the requirements of the ordinance. And so with that in mind, although there are a number of items in our list that are noted as details that need to be provided for, we are comfortable with recommending this preliminary site plan for approval. We've recommended that be contingent upon the applicant addressing the key items that are related to a preliminary site plan, which is that use statement and the access and sidewalk details. But as I said, we're comfortable with recommending this forward to you with that request for conditions. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have as we go along.
Well, let me just ask real quickly before I open it up to everyone. The letter that is on our desk from Lisa Campbell, obviously I haven't been able to sit here and read it all the way through, but I see it primarily deals with the wetland and drainage issues and water and things like that. Is there anything in this letter that if you had received it before you wrote your report, you would have addressed in your report? And is there anything you want to say about it?
I guess I'll say a few things. I'd hope that Mr. Beebe, the engineer, would be here tonight, because I expected that he might have some things to say about the engineering details. These items, the wetland, the natural features, increased stormwater runoff, all those items, for us, are final site plan details. We expect to see those details on the final site plan. Stormwater runoff calculations, all that are reviewed by our township engineer as part of a stormwater management permit. And so that's all checked basically after a preliminary site plan action. That's all checked before you see a final site plan. So we're comfortable that the applicant can meet those requirements. We've had previous conversations with the engineer about this site, and we believe there's certainly sufficient room to deal with stormwater management in an effective way. The comments about flooding are that is a challenge, and it's one that I think would be, in terms of answers, would be best addressed by Mr. Beebe, the engineer. So I would hold that thought really until the final site plan comes back. For our purposes, I will tell you that in general, the goal, both in our ordinance and generally in terms of state permitting, when it comes to regulated wetlands, is number one, they don't want to have the input into the wetlands to not be reduced, really not be altered from the existing condition. They want the existing conditions to continue on that site. So any additional runoff that would be coming from the impervious surfaces, that is to be held in some kind of stormwater basin detention facility, and then released slowly out of it or infiltrated into the ground. The goal really is both for water going into that wetland, but also water that may be flowing out of that wetland onto the neighboring property to match existing conditions. So I'm sure there's water that flows off of that property as part of the general groundwater flow or surface water flow in that area. And the goal, as I said, both for the state and for our zoning ordinance, is that existing conditions are maintained even when the new development takes place. So that will be the priority. in terms of what our engineer will be reviewing when they're looking at stormwater management.
Not to belabor the point, but does that law or regulation get down to the level of if you build a parking lot, the water that runs off of it, whether you detain it or not, probably will have more salt and petroleum byproducts in it than water that runs off from an empty field?
Yeah, there's certain elements in terms of the stormwater management that are required to deal with things like that, oil separator, first flush, elements to try to capture those contaminants and keep them from going off into the wetland. So yes, your question is yes, that is addressed in our stormwater ordinance, and it will be part of what our engineer will be reviewing.
Let me open it up to other commissioners. Commissioner Hayes?
In the case of wetland mitigation needing to be done due to loss because of the development, like, who's that covered by? Is it run by an outside engineer firm? Is it something that the people that are building the development will then have to, get allotment from other lands in order to try to match up any loss of wetland that comes?
But as I said, we understand that this is a state-regulated wetland. It means it's regulated by state law, and that's usually based on size, connectivity to existing waterways, and several factors. If it is a state-regulated wetland, then the state rules would apply as related mitigation. I don't recall the percentages. My recollection last time I looked at those rules was, as I said, it was not a one-to-one mitigation. If you wipe out a half-acre of wetlands, you have to create more than the half-acre of wetlands somewhere else that's in that same system.
But we're not sure who has to set aside that land or things now, like,
Well,
would you need to do an approval process in the final phase, like,
yeah.
would there have to be another site already secured by the developers?
Typically, it's on the same site.
Same site.
And this site has enough land to potentially be able to do that. The requirement would all be part of our outside agency approvals that as part of our site plan process, in between preliminary and final site plan applications, the applicant is required to go out and deal with all the outside agencies that are involved. Our engineer is one of those outside agencies related to stormwater. Public Services Department is an outside agency related to water and sewer connections. In this case, they would also be required to work with the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, on any state permitting they need related to the wetlands, if they need it. And so we would simply be asking from them confirmation of what's required or not required.
And that would all come in prior to final?
Prior to final site plan application, yes. Yeah. And the applicant may have some more comments on this matter. So, yeah.
Commissioner Brown?
To jump off on that, the entire 10 acres, from your comments, it sounds like not all of those 10 acres are protected wetlands.
No, as you see, and again, this is something I think you'll get more information on the final site plan. The applicant will be more. But my understanding is essentially that area labeled in the plan is natural area to remain across the northern part of the property. That's where those regulated wetlands are.
Okay, so the rest of the property then is just undeveloped but not protected.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, and then another question I had was just the sheer amount of caveats to conform is much more than I'm used to seeing. I know I'm relatively new here. Normally, we only see 2 or 3 details that need to be added to the final site plan, and in this case, I see that there are over 20. Is that out of the norm, or is this something that happens regularly?
Well, you'll see on here, there's things like there are some missing items, and under item 1, page 20 of your packet, required site plan information. Although they provided part of the building elevation set, they didn't provide all of it. That's a detail, it should be part of this set. However, we're comfortable that with the information provided, that we have sufficient to understand what the building is going to look like at this stage. You know, the building can change between preliminary and final as they're working out architectural details and that kind of thing.
Right.
So, in the same way, you know, that use statement is a big item, and it should be on the preliminary site plan. In this case, because we have a history with this particular applicant where they did go to the zoning board of appeals, and they did provide a detailed use statement as part of that application. We're familiar with what they're proposing to use the site for, which is a church, and all the things that are normally part of a church. There are no surprises in that list of proposed uses. So all we're asking, and that list from 2022 is completely in compliance with our ordinance for the zoning district. So all we're asking here is we just need that list on the final site plan. So while it may, you know, even in those three items, it may seem like a lot under required information, they are details that you might call them almost housekeeping details, essentially. And that's what a lot of the other items are too. If you look under parking, the first item is simply verify that there's 15 feet of clearance. That's an ordinance requirement, that a loading area have at least 15 feet of vertical clearance. This is a loading area that's along the drive in front of the church. It's going to be cleared. There are existing trees there now, but they won't be there when they develop the site. We have no concern that there won't be 15 feet of height clearance, but they just need to note on the plan that there is. Similarly, there's some other, many of the comments are add a note, add a dimensional standard. Under sidewalks, the sidewalk along the front of the building is 6 feet wide generally. Well, where it directly abuts parking spaces, where parking spaces pull into the sidewalk, our sidewalk and pathway ordinance requires it to be 7 feet. They showed it at 6. There's plenty of room to make it 7. They just need to correct that. And so there are a number of notes. We would prefer not to have this many items on the list, but the notes really are things that can easily be addressed on the final site plan. So that's why we're still comfortable with recommending this for conditional approval. That none of these notes materially affect the site design or alter how the site relates to surrounding properties. They're all essentially, as I said, a little bit more in housekeeping details, but they're details that can easily be put on that final plan.
So, I understand all that. I guess my question is, like, we've seen similar things in other proposals. Yes, they're minor housekeeping items. There's something that's been omitted, but it's not really a big deal. Again, like there have only been a handful on the ones at least that I've dealt with, and so out of I want to ask as from like historically, have we approved sites before that have had a similar number of housekeeping items that are totally fine, but just kind of add up, and so that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So I don't know how far back. I mean, I've been here since 2020. This is a pretty big number.
Okay.
Since I've been here, they are still just details.
Right.
But what I will say is that you have every right to see a plan that satisfies these items, especially the items that are required for preliminary site plan approval, which are the item 1 there. Those are required to be on a preliminary site plan. They're not there. The sidewalk item, they probably should have that, the sidewalk details corrected on the preliminary site plan, including if they're asking you to grant any kind of temporary relief related to that section of sidewalk along part of Isabel Road. So there are items that really ought to have been on this plan that aren't. And you have every right, if you choose to, as a commission, to postpone action and request the changes be taken care of. I would not recommend denying the plan because of these items. My suggestion would be is if you're not comfortable with approving the preliminary plan, contingent on these things being corrected on the final, would be a completely appropriate action to postpone action and simply cite as reason that you want to see a revised plan that addresses the preliminary site plan requirements.
Thank you.
Other questions for Rodney while he's up here? We're going to hear from the applicant as well, and then we'll sort of cycle back through. But Commissioner Lau?
But if we added conditions to the approval, those would have to be met anyway on the final site plan. I guess I don't see, I understand the concern with the number. I feel like I've seen enough site plans that have multiple conditions that need to wind up on the final site plan, that I think as long as we specify and identify the things that need to be addressed, it doesn't, I wouldn't see why we would want to see another preliminary site plan. I would rather see the final site plan with all of those issues addressed and just be more specific in our approval.
But we don't get a chance to see those final site plans.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, we do?
Oh, yeah,
Well,
this gets her started.
yeah, I get what I'll say. You're absolutely right. That we had, because of the amendment that was adopted late last year, final site plans can be an administrative action, but only if they meet all of the requirements of the ordinance. No conditions, no fix this and get approved. It has to meet all the requirements. In this case, the only way they could do that is if they put that sidewalk in all the way up Isabella Road.
Gotcha.
If they did that and fixed the other items, then actually it's up Isabel Road and actually down to Bud Street. There's also the sidewalk ramps at the intersection of Bud Street that are missing on this plan. So if they put those on the plan and construct them without a request for relief related to those natural conditions, then the plan could be approved administratively.
How could it be approved if it's violating the state natural land?
They would have to deal with that too. So they would have to show how they are going to put that in a way that meets the state requirements as well. I said there's really two ways to do that. One is to elevate the sidewalk, to create a boardwalk through that space where they're not impacting the wetland. The other way is to fill a sufficient area to allow the sidewalk to be constructed, and then they'd have to meet whatever state requirements there are related to mitigating that affected wetland area.
So any provisional site approval would have to go along with wetlands laws from Michigan, or if they do not apply for a variance, would it be like we'll be looking at possibly addressing this like post-construction? No, before anything would be done, they would need to have sign off from the state over the lands.
They're going to need to have provide documentation to us that they've met whatever state requirements apply before you see a final site plan application.
Okay, great.
One thing I'll say to you is this: if you would like to see the final site plan, if you choose to approve, take an approval action tonight, it would be completely appropriate to add a condition that because of the scope of items of information that were not on this plan, that you are requiring that the final site plan come back to you. That would be a completely appropriate condition to include on that action. I'm comfortable either way. If you postpone action, the applicant will revise the plan and bring it back to you. If you approve the plan, obviously they will then deal with the outside agencies that are involved, fully engineer the site, and come back to you with a final site plan for further review.
And the sample motions that you provided for us, if there is site approval, preliminary site approval, site plan approval with conditions, it clearly states that the applicant shall address the items of missing required information. And lastly, it states the final site plan submitted to the planning commission's satisfaction. So to your point,
Well, the second condition's not in the motions, but it can be added as a condition.
yes, I'm just saying, I think
Absolutely.
you gave that to us as an example of what we could
Yeah.
say as you've given that to us. in the past.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's clear.
Other questions for Rodney? Okay, seeing none at the moment, thank you. So now we'd like to hear from the applicant. Anything you'd like to say to us, any additional information, any response, anything about the project in general? And please give us your name and address for the minutes.
Okay, my name is Jeff Parker. I'm Jeff with Jeffrey Parker Architects, 855 28th Street in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So we work with a lot of churches, And our intention tonight was that I was going to be here in a supportive role because Tim Beebe is a known commodity here, which is why we actually retained him, the church did, because we're trying to do things locally as much as we can. But Tim's wife had surgery this morning in Saginaw, and as I was sitting here, he texted me saying, hey, he can't make it. His wife had complications, and he may even have to stay overnight in Saginaw. So you're stuck with me. But I've been working with Thrive Church for a number of years, where they've been trying to find their home and do it in a way that they can be a blessing to the community, not force themselves in on anything or anybody, including immediate neighbors in the community as a whole. So that's our intention, and our intention is to do something that all of the township and your planning commission can look back and say, hey, you know what, they did a nice job. That's our intention. And there's a couple of things I wanted to share with you, and to not be redundant to what we were talking before. So we discovered after Thrive closed on the property that there were wetlands. We had we learned that there may be wetlands there from Tim. And so we hired a wetlands consultant, and then he flagged the edges of the wetland there. And on the survey or the drawing that you have, one of the drawings you have, it shows a crosshatched area and an area beneath that that's not. All of the crosshatched area is protected wetlands. So they did that, and then we actually, all of us, met two people from Eagle there, and we walked the property from one end to the other and learned how to, and also there was our wetlands consultant. And out of that, in working with them, we were initially thinking, well, we'll just shift some wetlands around, and because we were initially wanting to be closer to Isabella. And we thought, well, we'll just take some of those, move those to the back, and kind of move the deck chairs around a little bit. And another option that Eagle said is if you really needed to, you can buy wetlands off-site from other people, like the power company. A lot of times will have a lot of property, and you can move wetlands over there. And anyway, it all gets complicated, and in the end, we have enough property here to stay out of the wetland, and we would have a difficult time shifting things around or anything. And so what we elect to do, stay out of the wetland completely and just keep that area preserved exactly as it is. We can't go in there and clean it out or do anything. And so that area that's crosshatched, we intend to leave it alone. In terms of stormwater drainage, we're not putting any stormwater in there at all. We're creating impervious surfaces with the roof and with the parking lot, and it's all going to be drained. There's going to be retention down towards Isabella, and Tim is the one that's easier to explain this, but it's going to all drain towards Isabella, and then the discharge is going to go, or the overflow, into the storm sewer that's there. So no storm water, no salt, no nothing is going into the wetland. If it did, we would have to get a permit for that. As it is, the wetlands consultant and the state have said if we're not touching the wetland, if we're staying out of it, we really don't even need to get permits from them or anything. But we are advising them what we're doing, because we want to do things right, and we don't want to get in trouble. You know, sometimes out of ignorance you can do the wrong things. So we're trying to surround ourselves with those right people. Initially, we thought areas were wet there because when we were first looking at the property, we actually consulted with Michigan Consulting and Environmental, which is next door. And I'm not actually sure if that's the same place that wrote that letter, but we spoke with a guy, Rusco, that's there. He worked there for umpteen years, and so he was familiar with how drainage and things work around there associated with this property, and because he worked there for a long time, and so he had tipped us off, and then they did I think they did a phase 1 ESA for us, or just to check for environmental contamination on the property. So, and Guy Rusco from that company is actually who suggested we contact Tim Beebe. So that's where we're trying to, you know, work with people that know this property, that know, you know, just know how things are, so we can try to be, as we would like to say, a blessing to the community. So, not to beat it to death, but maybe I did. That's what's going on with the wetland. We're not touching it. We're staying away from it. We're not going to grade into it. We're not doing anything with it. Part of in addition to that, that wetlands goes all the way up to Isabella Road, and back in the day, probably Isabella Road, when it was put in, went through the wetland, where back then maybe it was less of a big deal other than making sure it didn't get washed out or mushy or anything. But because the wetland goes up to there, it's a big deal to touch the wetland no matter what. And the Eagle, they don't care, you know, whether it's the township, whether it's us, whether it's anybody, they've got their wetlands and that's it. We would rather not touch that area, so would ask for relief. We can't just put even a raised walkway across there without getting permits, because it's a big deal to them. It's not going anywhere at this point in time. We are putting in a lot of walks. But so we would like to get relief, as you were calling it, from putting a walk there, really with the express purpose of not having to touch the wetland. Then the entire wetland is being left alone, and it's any whatever natural habitat that's there for that, and then we're just staying off to the side of it. So we would ask for that, and maybe if you could, because we are trying to do things in a right way, give us a sense of if you would be willing to consider that or not, as we, just so that we can give Tim the right direction how to pursue plans for that. As far as the landscaping, really everything we left to Tim's discretion to develop these drawings to whatever extent he thought was right. We just felt like he knows everybody, and so we just kind of had him take care of things. But with the landscaping, I'm sure we'll do it right there too. We're trying to keep a nice buffer between what we're doing and Bud Street, so that we can keep kind of a sense of naturalness between the church and the properties across the street. Lastly, with respect to driveways, we have submitted what our intentions are to the road commission, and so Tim submitted those plans at the same time we submitted drawings for this, so we expect to hear from them soon. But we put the driveways in as they suggested initially. Tim met with them a while back and got their direction, like at where the 90-degree turn is on Bud Street. We put this new drive in as they told Tim to do it, which is to go in straight and then have it where you had to turn left or right. So anyway, there's that, and then the one on Isabella. They're just looking at both of those. So by the time we get to final site plan approval, we intend to have that all worked out with them too. So we're trying to do well with you, and I'm sorry that Tim's not here, and but I can tell you as an architect, the building's going to be cool, and the back and the side, the parts that you didn't see, are going to really be just like the other two sides, because we care what it looks like from all of those sides. We even have on the north side of the building, in the middle, you'll see kind of a like an arrowhead, it looks like. That's an outdoor patio, and the idea is just a place to go out and have coffee. It's by the wetland area. Because that's kind of a nice setting looking back there. So we're trying to, not just turn our back on it and treat it as, a nasty thing, but actually make it a focal point for people that are within the building, that they can enjoy that. So anyway, that's my story. We do have Kevin here. Kevin, and he's from the church, and he can answer more detailed church-related questions if you would like. But otherwise, like I said, that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it.
Questions from commissioners for the architect, Mr. Parker?
Sure.
So you had mentioned the lengths that you guys plan on going to protect these wetlands and to have the storm runoff go into the proper storm drains, which is greatly appreciated. Something that Rodney mentioned, though, that I have a question about is the fact that in addition to making sure that you have no new runoff going in, but you also have the same amount going in as well. And I know that the area currently is very wooded and may not be considered part of the wetland, but probably does contribute to natural rainfall runoff and stuff like that. So putting impervious parking lot structures, building structures, could that potentially reduce the amount of water available to the wetland, causing issues? And if so, how do you guys plan to address that?
You're saying, could it reduce it?
Yeah.
It could reduce it. We're catching what we're putting and having it go off, like I was saying, and right now the ground just gets mushy everywhere. Right. So, it's possible just that there's less to perk into the ground, but it's, I guess we're just working within what Eagle told us to do. If we divert any water into there, we would have to get their permit. Right. So they suggested to do it this way.
Okay.
So we're just following what they said, and Eagle has no problems doing it. No problems. They prefer that we do it this way.
Okay.
They just don't want us touching it.
And those are the people in charge of
wetlands.
Okay.
Yeah, they had two wetlands consultants, Eagle, and they're assigned this, or an area, I don't know if it's this area, it's probably a pretty big area. But I think the wetlands consultants have, there's northern Michigan, central, all these different areas. Anyway, the two people that issue permits, review plans, all that stuff, they met us there on site while the flags were in the ground. So we're the edges here. we walked the property with them because the wetlands consultant wanted to make sure that they agreed with them where the edge of the wetland was. And then also, you know, the wetlands consultant wanted to test the waters with them as far as, you know, moving things around and all that. But they were very, we'll say, rigid.
Gotcha.
So that's why we're just working within really the direction that Eagle guided us to.
Okay, thank you. Another question unrelated to the wetlands issue is you did mention your driveways. You plan to have one on Isabella and one on Bud.
Yes.
The notes I have say that there is a potential conflict with that driveway located on Bud because you intend to put it there at that corner. Let me read my thing here that it could pose a potential safety concern because it could be seen by drivers as a potential extension of the road rather than a driveway. Is that something that was brought to your attention early? And
Yes, that's what Rodney wrote. We're following the direction of the
Okay.
road commission. The
So-
road commission, we proposed having it offset or so, but the road commission wants it just like this.
Okay, the road commission is the ones that made that determination.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
They
thank
didn't-
you.
They didn't write that.
Gotcha.
So that's where you get a lot of people that are trying to look out for us, you know, and you just, they're good things to point out. So, but they still have to look at this too. You know, that was just, Tim met with them and also a manager, two people from there, and got direction on that. And then the Isabella one.
All right, thank you very
But
much.
until they sign off it on paper, you know.
Right.
So that's in process.
Are you asking for relief from just the portion of the sidewalk that would traverse the wetland, or
Yes.
all of it?
No, just the part that traverses the wetlands. So that's pretty much just on the north side of that driveway and heading to the north. And, you know, as part of that, it's and I'm sure you're all this time, but it's not going anywhere. And so what it would do is disrupt a wetland, and then you think where are people going up that direction? For the, you know, for maybe 5 or 10 years, it won't matter. I don't know, I'm just talking.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and Rodney included the suggestion in the report. Normally, those sorts of requests appear right on the plan.
Yeah.
So on the final site plan, it could be a box on
We'll
one of the
make
pages.
sure that, that's where I was saying, we're just relying on Tim's knowledge of how things
Mhm.
are supposed to go.
I'm
But
not,
I'm cutting him some slack because he's, you know, he's got some issues going on. I hope his wife is fine.
Mhm.
I'm not an engineer, but I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to put any sidewalk on the north side of the driveway. If you're asking for relief, it would make more sense to just not have the sidewalk there at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to put it on the
mean-
plan, but then ask to not include it in.
You mean
your-
on all of Isabella?
No, just
North
on the
of
south
it.
side of your drive, but not on the north side towards the wetland.
Just here.
What you're suggesting is
Good suggestion.
run it up to the
I
driveway here.
agree.
And why would you
Oh,
put
you
probably need a
10
curb
feet of
return
sidewalk
here.
there? And then it would
Oh,
just leave
okay,
people to walk
okay.
into the wetland, which you don't want them to do.
Yep. I'll make sure that, yeah, I get it.
Seems like that's
I've seen them done
Yeah.
this way too, sometimes.
Just a short little thing like that?
Yeah, yeah.
But isn't that with land that then could eventually be
Yeah,
sidewalk?
usually it's because it goes to the property line on the other
Right.
side. The only thing I'm thinking is it better to build the curb cut and the place where the sidewalk joins now, or is it better to, because I'm assuming if you're not gonna have sidewalk on the north side, that curb will look different than if you do.
Right.
I would think, you know, personally, from a, you know, we're always dealing, my head always thinks about barrier-free issues, and if you put a dub down on that side, a handicapped person particularly, I don't know if you'd have somebody blind going along there, but if they were, it's kind of conveying that it keeps going, rather than stopping.
Typically, in terms of design, you would have a curb return on the other side. I understand it would then go into lawn area, grass area, but you typically, wherever you have a curb return on one side, you want to have one on the other side, whether that's across the road or across the driveway. But it could certainly stop at the north side of that driveway, basically put the curb return there and stop. We would ask, even in that circumstance, that there be a plan that shows the sidewalk going all the way. That's what we ask. That's what the sidewalk and pathway ordinance requires. And we would also ask that the easement be provided that would allow future construction of most likely a boardwalk design. So the easement and all would have to be set up to provide space for that to happen in the future. Whether that's done by the applicant, but more likely done by the township. I understand it's the end of the sidewalk. Isabella Road is part of our designated roads in the sidewalk policy. And one of our largest private employers is just another mile or so up the road, across the freeway, but nonetheless, it's just another mile up the road. So there are reasons eventually to extend the sidewalk system all the way up there, but not something that would be happening tomorrow or in the next several years anyway. So the proposal to grant relief is reasonable. But I would recommend that you wait on that until you see a final site plan where those details are on the plan.
So we want to show, but ask for relief. Am I hearing that
That's
right?
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
The, on the elevation, is the exterior brick, or is it like a faux brick, or it looks like brick and glass is primarily what you're showing?
It's kind of embarrassing. I didn't bring any drawings with me because I didn't know. But yeah, it's brick and stone. We'll on the final that we show, we'll list all the materials, and we can even have samples. But our intent is to have a very welcoming building where there's not a sense of walls, it's just openness. And there's on the front here, adjacent to the main entrance, there's some glass that's pitched out a little bit or angled out, and behind that there's kids' play areas inside. Because it's a very family-focused church. We might end up finding some of you coming here.
Other questions for the applicant?
What is your anticipated timeline?
I think. You want to speak to that, Kevin?
So pending approval of the building, and we have a building campaign that's occurring right now for funding. So pending approval and funding, we're hoping that we can start the process as early as this summer.
Does that cover it for me?
Any other questions for the architect? No, I think, you're welcome to have a seat if we have other questions. You're not going anywhere, so we'll
Thank
definitely
you.
get them asked. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we're into commission review of the site plan and also commission deliberation and action. So we've sort of lumped those two together. So It's on the floor. We've had some question and answer. If any commissioners have other questions or comments, welcome to voice those at this time. And then you also have the list of options for action.
I guess I'll start. I definitely I'm looking at this this letter that was just recently sent to us that we got a chance to read, and it definitely addressed a lot of the initial concerns that I had when I was reviewing this material, and I'm glad that they were able to address some of that here today at the podium. But yeah, the big concerns are that making sure that those wetlands are preserved, and then being in compliance with our different ordinances, especially with the roads and sidewalks. It's unfortunate, and my my best wishes go out to the engineer and his family about him not being able to be here. I feel like he could have answered a lot of these questions for us, and I'm kind of on the fence of whether I want to approve with conditions or postpone, just mostly based on the fact that the engineer's specifically not here to answer those technical questions. And then so that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I
I was just going to say, I'm on the other side of the fence and wouldn't want to delay it any further, so I would make a motion to approve the ESPR 24-03 preliminary site plan dated December 23rd, 2024 for a new 28,300 square foot Thrive Community Church facility on the northeast corner of South Isabella Road and Bud Street in the southwest quarter of Section 22 and in the B7 Retail and Service Highway Business Zoning District, finding that the site plan can comply with the applicable zoning ordinance requirements for preliminary site plan approval, including sections 14.2.p, required site plan information, and 14.2.s, standards for site plan approval, subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall address the items of missing required information, the detailed use statement, and access and sidewalk details of the final site plan to the Planning Commission's satisfaction.
support.
Okay, so there was a motion made by Commissioner Olver, and it was seconded by Commissioner Gross to approve the preliminary site plan with conditions. And so the conditions now, you say in the motion, the applicant shall address the items of missing required information, the detailed use statement. But when it talks about missing required information, we're talking about as enumerated in your report.
Correct. That is correct, yes.
Okay. So maybe should the motion say that? I mean, are we wanting to say what missing information we are?
I certainly would not have any objection at all if it referenced as delineated in the staff report dated January 15th.
Would it be clear just to say that we want the final plan site approval again before it goes through? Like, as opposed to having specific remediation that need to be approved to our satisfaction now, saying that we approve the preliminary site plan now, knowing that the final site plan will come back to us before approval, even if it matters.
Isn't that what that says? The final site plan to the planning commissioner's satisfaction?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
It
so.
says it.
I'm not quite sure if that means that if their preliminary site plan approval is to what we're setting today, that it's okay, or if that it would be come back to us. I guess that was my clarification I wanted there.
My suggestion is if you would like to see this final site plan, you're likely to see it because they need to get, if they're going to seek temporary relief from sidewalk construction, you're going to see the plan. But to be clear, you certainly could add a condition that states that the final site plan is required to come back to the Planning Commission for approval.
I would like to add that condition.
Are you
have the
willing
site
to add
plan
it as a
come back.
friendly amendment?
Personally, I'm comfortable with it going through the process, but I will stipulate and agree to the amendment?
Is the seconder in
Yeah,
agreement with
I
that?
would agree. I support
Okay.
that.
So I guess the simplest way to do that is to add a second condition that the final site plan will come to the planning commission.
I would
Subject
agree
for-
with the
for
commission
final approval.
over that. We have a process in place. It's, the things that are missing are more, they're just little details. They're not major things. I'm fine with putting that in there, but, you know, there is an advantage. Although they're looking at potentially starting in the summertime, we'll see it before. We're not gonna delay them. But I'd like to, for all of us to think in the future that possibly maybe somebody's ready to go today. And if they meet all the criteria and are willing, then we should allow that to happen because we've spent the time to put this policy in place. This particular situation, you're looking at summertime, we're not gonna delay anything, but it could to some other projects.
We're not changing the policy, though. We're just specifically asking in this case to see this plan.
Well, no, but we did spend a lot of time talking about if they meet all the criteria, they don't need to bring it back. We're not, like I said, what the things that are missing aren't so, you know, overwhelming that, you know, they couldn't take care of them. You know, like one of them's, you know, just noting where the dumpster is. I mean, we all know where it is, but it is important to have it noted. The sidewalk, from 5 to 7 feet, the sidewalk is being shown in here, but, you know, it's just a question of putting that in there. You know, things like that.
Yeah. I don't think that's why it's coming back. I think it's coming back because two things. One, as Rodney pointed out, they're going to ask for relief, and I think we've decided that that's not going to be granted administratively. That's going to be our decision.
Yeah.
And secondly, I don't know, I for one would like to hear maybe a walkthrough of what they come up with on the stormwater management and how that's going to be handled, particularly in relation to the wetland. And so to me, this is a little bit of a special case because there's a wetland involved, a resident, although they're a neighbor, but they've expressed a concern. And, you know, just for us doing our due diligence, I think it would be great if Tim could be here and to walk us through what they are proposing.
That's not necessarily determined by Tim, though. That's determined by Eagle, correct?
Well, yeah, but how they're going to do it? What's going to be? What are they going to do to comply with what's in there?
This is just kind of an offset question, and I get what you're getting. What if Eagle said, this is what you got to do, and they're going to do it, but it doesn't meet our satisfaction? I mean, that doesn't, the state overrides, correct?
So, if I may, the answer is yes. The state permitting applies to regulated wetland. We don't have separate rules that are stricter than that. We simply require that whatever is being done be shown on the final site plan and documented as to why it's being done and how and showing how the wetland is impacted or not impacted. The comment I think goes back to the comment earlier about the driveway location. We have a little concern about that design. It does make it look like the road goes straight. That's something actually relatively easily addressed without even relocating the driveway. But ultimately, it is the road commission that makes the decision on what that driveway approach will look like within their right-of-way. Where our comments are is actually related to things out of the right-of-way, including that sidewalk, adjusting that sidewalk design so it's not angling across that the wide part of that driveway, and then also putting some private driveway signs up so that it makes clear what's actually going on there. So we have an area where we work in this case, the road commission or Eagle had an area where they work in, and all of that ends up on this final site plan. This is one of the few sites we've dealt with, and that's saying a lot because we approved a jail. It's one of the few sites we've dealt with that has regulated wetlands. Most of the properties we've dealt with have been in areas where all of that's been addressed. You know, Valvoline and the Leo's Coney Island, all those things were sites where the mass grading, all that took place years ago. Everything's designed, everything flows properly. The wetland areas are long protected. This is a piece of raw land in an area that has wetlands, so it is different than what you've seen in most cases. I wish that Mr. Beebe had put the wetland details, even just noted that this is a wetland on this plan, and provided some more information about how it would be protected. But that really is a final site plan detail. He does not have to have that on this plan. I wish certainly he could have been here, but obviously he has very, very good reason to be excused. I think with all that in mind, it is quite reasonable to have this plan get back to you. For the simple fact that this is really a unique site in that we're, for the first time in a very long time, dealing with regulated wetlands and development near that. It's worth having that come back to you and having those elements explained. I will say, from our perspective, although Eagle was not on our list of outside agencies, we just listed the usual on there. We are going to be requiring, because it's one of the outside agencies that's involved, requiring documentation from Eagle, both related to any permitting. So typically they will provide a no permit required letter if it's not required, and they'll provide documentation why. But we're also going to be looking for documentation, whether it's from Eagle, from Mr. Beebe, or the wetland consultant, to address how this wetland is going to be protected, how we not ensure that it won't be impacted by the development. So all those elements would be part of what comes back to you as part of that final site plan.
May I
Mr. Chair,
read
just
a
a-
revision?
Oh, just,
Oh, sorry.
I'll hold my question for a moment.
Okay. Because I can read the revision of the condition based on this discussion. The applicant shall address the items of missing required information as delineated in the staff report dated January 15th, 2025, including the detailed use statement and access and sidewalk details on the final site plan to the Planning Commission's satisfaction. Additionally, due to the absence of Mr. Beebe and the existence of a wetland on the property, the Planning Commission requests review of the final site plan.
Comfortable with that amendment?
Okay.
Okay. Other discussion or questions?
Just a question. I believe, if I heard him correctly, Mr. Parker asked for a sense of the Planning Commission about the relief on the sidewalk. Is there a way for us to convey what our current thinking is as a body, or will that have to wait?
Yeah, well, as part of our deliberation, there's certainly the opportunity for us to give our opinions.
Are you asking, do we have an opinion that we want to see a sidewalk there or that we don't want to see a sidewalk there?
Well, I think he's just looking for direction from us as to whether or not that's an okay. And I kind of got that sense from our discussion, but I wanted to have some clarity there as they walk out the door.
Well, I'm certainly on the side of protecting the wetland, so I would not want to see a sidewalk there.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I think
as well.
I'm not
I just
alone on that.
I would agree.
feel like
Yeah.
that would be helpful as they
Yeah.
move on to their next.
I think us who have some slight disagreements, we're mostly concerned, like you said, about the wetland. So something like this, the sidewalk, and having a relief for that is, I think everybody's on the same page with that.
And I would like to call the question.
Okay, so the motion has been made to approve the preliminary site plan with the specified conditions. And so we're ready for a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Tearing,
Yes.
Gross,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Squadrito,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Lapp, yes. Ulver,
Yes.
Hayes.
yes.
Everyone voted to approve, no dissents.
Okay, motion carried, 9 votes to 0. And you carried on like our intrepid staff secretary who's not here, and you called us in random, what I could discern as random order.
You really have to pay attention.
I thought it was going to be number 3.
You never know when your name is going to be called.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Good luck with the next step.
Drive safely.
So at this point, we have a couple more things just to wrap up the meeting. I promised that we would have extended public comment, so after we've completed our specified business, we have an extended public comment where individuals are invited to address the planning commission on any issue, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not. If you want to do so, we ask you to come to the podium and give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes on any issue. If you're listening online and wish to do so, just make your presence known and we'll make arrangements for you to be able to talk. So extended public comments open at 8:15.
Yes, I have, my name's Lisa Campbell, and I live here in Mount Pleasant. And I have concerns about, I have no problem with the church building their church, whatever they're building there, but I do have concerns about the water table there. The water table is very close to the surface there, and when they remove them trees and start bringing in fill, which they are gonna bring in fill, and raise that portion of the land up, where's that water gonna go? I mean, I know they say, in their plans, they say they're gonna drain it to the north of their property, which is me.
I believe the plan said that for the paved area, that it was going to go into the existing storm sewer, was what I gleaned from
Right, but
the plans.
the water table is like a foot and a half below ground there. The water table's very close. So when they start building all that, where's that water all gonna go? I mean, that's my concern. I don't care if they build their church, how they build their church. My concern is that it is gonna flood me. And, let's see. On 5 of 5 of the plans, it says open lawn area provided positive drainage to the north. I mean, I couldn't print everything off because I didn't have a big enough printer to do that, but.
I think she's referring to this fourth page of the drawings,
It's fine.
where it says the open lawn area, and in
Mhm.
parentheses, provides positive
Yes.
drainage to the north.
Yeah.
And I forget how many parking spaces they're gonna have, 178 or 200 and something. That's my only concern, is the water, because water is an issue there already.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're going to put in a storm sewer drainage that drains it all the way out to Isabella, it is going to flood. I see it every year.
The way the plan looks, it's gonna drain it into the retention pond, everything.
Yeah,
off
but the retention, you can drain it in the retention pond, but the retention pond is going to release it slowly. That ground's already saturated with water year-round.
I think the
So-
overflow said it was gonna go into the drains on the road, into the
Storm sewer.
storm sewer.
I think
Out of
that's
the overflow off the retention pond goes into the storm sewer.
I think that's something that is going to be addressed. I guess we should probably ask the I guess the architect left, but he had mentioned that they had planned on, like you said, having it go to the storm sewer, and that does seem to be at odds with what
I mean, if
some
that's
of
how
the-
they're gonna do it, I don't object. My concern is the water.
Yeah, and I
That's-
think apologies. Do you need to continue? Sorry.
Because I took trees out, I took the elm trees out that were dying here, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, on the north side of my property there, and it flooded my crawl space because that water had anything wasn't sucking it up anymore. I mean, taking them trees out and everything, that sucks up a lot of water when them trees are in that land.
Hmm.
It doesn't reduce it.
Just to note, so everyone knows, Lisa, you own the Mount Pleasant Animal Hospital, correct?
No,
No?
I own the consulting company.
You own the consulting
No,
company?
I don't
too.
own the consulting company. I own the land.
You own the land there. Okay, I
Yes.
wanted to be sure, because I know they're both butting up against it pretty close
Yes.
there, right on the water.
And the state of Michigan has all that land right there as saturated groundwater.
Sorry. So yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why we want to see the final site plan rather than have it administratively approved, because at least I personally share those concerns and want to make sure that the final site plan does take into account the stormwater drain off, the preservation of the wetlands, and I think the preservation of the wetlands dovetails with your needs being north of them. So I absolutely hear your concerns, and I definitely understand that the drawings as presented paint a slightly different picture than what was presented to us today. And so I think that's why we voted to have the final site plan be reviewed by us, so that we can kind of just make sure that everything's working
Yeah.
correctly. So
Yeah, the one thing I would say, though, is that none of us are hydrologists.
No.
And so it's the stormwater management folks that have to sign off on this. And
Yeah.
in this case, I guess Eagle, because there's a wetland involved. But so we rely on them,
Mhm.
right, for the expertise. So if a plan comes back and it has the stormwater has signed off and Eagle has signed off, then I think, Commissioner Thering asked the question. I don't even know if we have the authority to pull it back, even if a neighbor says it's definitely going to flood. And you might be right. I don't know, but I'm just saying that it's the agencies that are ultimately going to make those calls, I think.
That was my concern.
Yeah. I appreciate it. We have the letter and we have your comments, and we definitely hear the concern, and
I don't know if there's going to be a drainage, the way I looked at the print, that it was just a drainage ditch going down to Isabella, and then that excess water will run into the drainage ditch in Isabella.
Well, there's a retention pond that's done.
Yes, there's a retention pond. I think there's a couple of retention ponds.
It looks like the storm sewer runs all the way along there. So it probably drains into it several places, not just from the retention pond.
When we get the final site plans that have this plumbing work in it, we'll be able to know a lot better.
That was what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
It looks like the parking lot is showing storm sewers regularly with drains.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, but I think them storm sewers, I think they go drain into the retention ponds. I'm not sure. I'm not an engineer neither.
They're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to.
we will do our best to look at it carefully and
Yeah,
to try
I
to
think that's-
understand it and
Final
make sure
site
that
plan.
it looks reasonable.
Make
But,
sure those things are addressed.
so,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
thank you.
Other public comments?
I'm Kevin Jensen. I live at 3814 Wintergreen Drive, Midland, Michigan. I'm an elder with Thrive Church. I also happen to be a geologist, for whatever that's worth. And I just want to say our primary intention is to be a good neighbor, and that we do want to address all those things in the final site plan, which will come back to you, and make sure that any water table or water runoff is addressed in that as well. So, any other questions for me as a representative of Thrive Church?
What flooded when I took them trees out was the crawl space underneath the office. That's what flooded.
Yeah, that is definitely indicating that the water table's already really high. I don't want to make this a big back and forth, but when did that happen? When was the actual flooding?
5 years ago.
Okay, because the other thing I just want to say, between roughly, I would say 2017 and 2020, we had like several wet years in a row, and it was constant. There was constantly standing, and every time we'd get a couple inches of rain, I'd have water in my crawl space. The last several years, like the year that just ended, we got 2/3 of our regular rainfall. We got about 21 inches as opposed to 32, 33. So a lot's going to depend on what happens. If we go back to those wet years, then there's going to be a lot more problems than if we stay dry. But I agree, we should try to build for, we ought to try to build for those wet years, because that's probably what's going to come again at some point. So, any other questions for the pastor? Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? All right, so we'll go ahead and thank the public for their comments, and we'll close extended public comment at 8:25. Last item is final board comment. This is an opportunity for commissioners to make any comments they want to make. Again, just remind everyone that there are trainings coming up in March through MAP. If you're interested in any of those, ask Peter to register you. Some of them are in person, some of them are online. And then also, if you haven't already filed your application for another term, those of you whose terms are expiring next month should do so. If you're not going to file for that, keep in mind that according to the law, commissioners can continue to serve until their replacement is appointed. So continue to show up as long as you're willing and able.
The door.
And I guess it's more or less public knowledge, so I
I
want to.
believe we have an extra applicant. If I read my Board of Trustees correctly, there is, I don't know if the supervisors had an opportunity to talk with that individual,
Mhm.
but
Okay. But I guess, I mean, I don't want to like reveal secrets or anything, but I'm aware that at least one commissioner has expressed a desire to, move on to greener pastures and let their, their work stand and not stand for another term. So I want to thank Commissioner Gross for his service on the Planning Commission. It's been a real pleasure. We appreciate your expertise, because you've been involved in an awful lot of things over the years and have a lot of knowledge and experience. So thanks, and enjoy whatever it is you're going to be doing for 2 to 3 hours on the third Tuesday evening of the month.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to serve. It's been a pleasure to be part of this group, and I've just enjoyed working with each and every one of you. So just to use an old, probably athletic term, is I always appreciate folks that are willing to get out of the bleachers and get on the court and serve.
Okay, well, thanks again. And we have had members who have continued to serve because there have been periods where it's been more difficult to find members. So you're always welcome, put it that way. Any other final board comments? All right, if not, then we have completed our agenda, so we'll stand adjourned until February. Stay warm out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.